Good morning, everybody. How's everybody doing? Good? Welcome to beautiful Silicon Valley. How many of y'all were outside this morning? A little bit, yeah? Enjoying the air? I thought to myself, what a great day to go cramp ourselves in a conference room and talk about databases. Everybody with me? Well, we have a very exciting agenda over the course of today. We're going to dig into a lot of topics and talk about our technology and our innovation, and you're going to hear from each other on different use cases and how you're taking advantage of the platform. And we've really designed this conference to be a customer one for customers. So we thank you very much for being here. For those of you that are active customers, we thank you for your business. And for those of you that are considering Couchbase, we look forward to articulating how we think we can help you. What I want to do with my time this morning is three things. I want to start out with a quick look at what I call the digital landscape and introduce a concept called the massively interactive enterprise. I then actually want to take some time and talk about what we at Couchbase have built as an engagement database in the Couchbase data platform. And then I want to get really specific on how that data platform can help solve your technical and business needs. We all sort of take for granted that we're at a time right now of unprecedented change. And we talk about it so much that we don't really step back and think about the implications. But when you go and study the people who actually do this for a living, the statistics are pretty fascinating. And I don't want to go into a ton of detail on those, but according to the World Economic Forum, we're in the single greatest change that the world has ever seen. More specifically, on the brink of a technology revolution that's going to fundamentally change the way we live, work, and relate to one another. In its scale, scope, and complexity, this transformation is going to be unlike anything humankind has ever seen. Now, those are pretty meaningful words. And they've started to talk about this in the context of the fourth industrial revolution. Well, what about the previous three? The first one happened 250 years ago, and it was about water and steam. 100 years later, it was electric power, and 100 years after that, it was electronics and IT. And if you think about the impact that all of those revolutions had on our lives and had on our ancestors' lives, they were fundamental. But when we think about this, we often think about these revolutions happening to us. The reality is none of those things happen, and the one that's occurring right now, we as businesses, the ones that are driving commerce, are going to dictate how successful this is and how it's going to positively impact our lives and how it's going to allow us to create businesses. The World Economic Forum suggests that this fourth revolution is about a fusion of technologies that blurs the line between the physical, digital, and biological spheres. Okay, so what do we do with that? Well, we at Couchbase study this revolution very closely, and we talk about the digital transformation. And for those of you that have spent time with us before, a couple years ago, we initiated a survey where we went out and talked to 450 digital leaders. Heads of IT, chief digital officers, even people that were responsible for infrastructure. And these companies that they represented were both in the United States and in Europe. We refreshed that survey earlier this year, and that's available for all of you to look at. And I wanted to share a few things from it. First, what was pretty staggering is each one of those companies, on average, spent $24 million on digital transformation in the last 12 months. That's a pretty significant amount of spend when everybody's trying to do more with less. We posed one question to them in particular that I found interesting, which is, where in your organization are you focusing your efforts? Where are you directing those $24 million of spend? And the answer to that question is reflected on the slide here. 66% of our respondents said they were focused on digital transformation to fundamentally change their end customers' experiences. 47% of respondents said their efforts were focused on improving their worker experiences. How do they make their employees more productive and more effective and allow them to create business competitive advantage? And 37% said we're focused on applications to take advantage of machine-to-machine applications and interactions. So what are all these companies trying to become? As I said, we're driving the fourth industrial revolution. What are they trying to become? Well, this is where this concept of massively interactive enterprise comes into play. And the reality is the type of organization that's going to succeed is the one that better utilizes technology to more effectively interact. And we all know there's an explosion of data. We do it in our professional lives, we do it in our personal lives. But what's really interesting is this concept of interaction. And we think about the volumes of data. The reality is how successful we are with our digital engagements comes down to the interactions that we have with the companies when we're transacting digitally. And it's not just how companies interact with their customers, it's how they interact with their employees, it's how they interact with all members of the value chain, like partners and even machines, as the survey indicates. So this concept of interaction is fundamentally important, and I want to explore that a little bit further. I'm going to use an example that we're all too familiar with, probably, and that's online shopping. So it's starting to get a little breezy as we move into the fall season. Let's say we want to go out and buy a jacket. Now, my guess is all of us have slightly different preferences on what brands we like, what size we are, what color we prefer. Some of you are coming in from colder parts of the country and might need a little bit thicker jacket than those of us that live here in California. But we go onto an online site and we start our shopping process. And we all know how to do this. We sort through the inventory. Eventually, we narrow in on something. We like to be told, hey, have you considered something else? We want to understand what our rewards situation is with this particular vendor. When could it be shipped to us? We want to see videos of. We want to look at customer reviews. Eventually, we put it into a shopping cart and we hit purchase. Now, why is that so important? In the world of databases, all the way up to that point of purchase is what we call interactions. Only when we hit buy do we drive a transaction. And in that example that I just walked through, if you look in aggregate across e-commerce, there's this really interesting ratio that emerges, which is 1,000 to 1. And it's often referred to as the browse to buy ratio. So 1,000 interactions to 1 transaction. And we see this 1,000 to 1 ratio in other verticals like travel, where it's called a look-to-book ratio, but still 1,000 interactions to 1 transaction. So something is happening there, but what's really interesting is when you take this one step further. So as we think about that one transaction, which is the relationship between us and an e-commerce vendor, how is that good, that jacket, eventually delivered to our house? Well, the reality is there's an entire supply chain of employees and suppliers and distributors and people that are actually manufacturing the product, places where they're holding inventory that need to ensure that that jacket arrives as it was promised to me from my e-commerce provider. Well, as we follow the data flows of that, where the initial set of interactions was 1,000 to 1, as we move into the supply chain, we think that increases to 100,000 to 1. Things like build order created and enter into inventory and shipping product. Then companies need to build things like factory automation and real-time status updates. There's also the role of machines, where how are they doing things like ongoing preventative maintenance of their factory floors? Or if the good is not a service, or if the good is not a jacket and yet a service that depends on further connectivity, how do they enable that to be an ongoing great experience? Well, when we look at those interactions, it's actually 1,000,000 to 1 ratio. So what started out as a simple, I want a new jacket, turns into this explosion of interactions that puts demands on all of our environments that simply weren't there before. And so this role of interactions to transactions becomes really, really important. Now, let me carry this forward and see if I can make this a bit more of a real example, and I'm going to blend some fiction and nonfiction here. So let me start with a fictitious company that we're going to call Fitco. And let's assume that this company, Fitco, can build every type of wearable device and can do every kind of health monitoring that we would want as consumers. And they have to have an online portal, they have to maintain inventory, they have to have stylish goods, they have a whole bunch of employees that are serving needs, they've got an army of trainers that are customizing workout programs, so we can all think about that company. Now, I want to share something that actually happened, and I'm going to solicit the help of my Couchbase colleagues. So a couple months ago, we had our healthcare provider that provides benefits for the company, and we had a credit. And one of the things that we were determining as a leadership team is what do we do with that credit? Well, one of the things that we thought of is let's create a great program where employees can set health goals, And in return, we're going to get some devices that allow them to be more effectively in pursuit of those health goals. So for the Couchbase team in the audience, raise a hands on who's taking advantage of that program. Okay, so we have quite a few. Now we're going to test how much nonfiction and fiction there is. So the people that raise their hands, how many of you think you're doing a better job with your fitness goals than your colleagues? All right, so clearly have some people that are stretching their imagination. We've got a very imaginative employee back there. But this is where the experience starts to change. And one of the things that I somewhat made the mistake of is working with a few colleagues on sleep goals. So we all want to sleep better, and so whereas before I had kind of gotten into the behavior of, well, let me set my phone aside and try to get some sleep, and then as soon as I wake up, I run into the bathroom where I have my phone and start looking at email. Well, over the last several weeks, what I've done is run and loaded my application to see how well, or in this case, how poorly, I've been sleeping. Then I rush into the office, and I'm literally, with the device and the application sitting there with other colleagues comparing, how much REM sleep do we get, right? And what I would do for an additional percentage so that I would feel better, and also so that I could win the competition. Well, imagine what I would do if this imaginary company, Fitco, had a better device. Maybe it looked better. Maybe it fit me better when I was sleeping. Maybe the algorithm that calculated it would actually accurately say that I'm a better, more effective sleeper than the people that I'm working with. I would do anything to change my experience as would the other people. But the reality is, to create that experience and meet my needs as a consumer and improve the experience that we all have requires a completely different approach to underlying infrastructure and specifically databases. So why do I take you all through that? If we were to look historically, and all of you know this pretty well, there were two types of databases. There was what we call the system of record or transactional databases, and there was what was referred to as a system of intelligence or analytical databases. Transactional databases ran fairly monolithic, slow, standard applications, and analytical databases allowed you to pose questions on the data that resided in there. But as we move into the modern world and we're experiencing the fourth industrial revolution, these legacy databases aren't sufficient. And with the explosion of all these interactions, a different approach was required. And that's why we at Couchbase have built the engagement database. And we have defined engagement as successfully managing interactions over time. And if I'm pleased with that relationship that I have with the digital provider, I'm engaged. I'm going to spend more money. I'm going to tell my friends about it. I'm going to be more productive at work. I'm going to encourage my employees to take advantage of applications. We're going to be more collaborative. Our business is going to be more successful. And in turn, the $24 million that we're spending to take advantage of the opportunity that business provides itself with this changing world will be successful with. Now, the reality of this approach is that with the engagement database that's focused on interactions, it affords us at Couchbase the flexibility with your input to determine how far we extend the platform. Do we take it in the direction of managing additional transactions, extending it from a system engagement to including more applications that blend engagement and system of record? Or do we blend it more in areas of analytics where we're allowing the platform to provide business insight in a more sophisticated way than would otherwise be the case? And as we get up here on stages like this and in breakout rooms and talk about our constant innovation, it's going to be in the context of this engagement database and how it relates to other legacy systems. Now, what we've done with that is we've built an integrated platform. And this integrated platform is built on the most powerful NoSQL engine in the industry. At the core of our architecture is an in-memory, shared nothing, scaled-out approach to our database. And from the early days of building this, we had a philosophy that we could start to consolidate layers of what were previously distinct systems. This started in 2011 when we brought two companies together that brought an industry-leading cache together with an industry-leading document-oriented database. And the philosophy that's driven our development is to continue to integrate services in a common platform that you can take advantage of. We've extended our architecture out to the edge with our mobile capability and ensured that we had synchronization technologies and data movement technologies to enable that distributed data platform that you can take advantage of. We've then continued to add data access technologies that application developers and applications themselves can take advantage of this underlying very flexible data schema. Things like key value, indexing, our industry-leading query language that we call Nickel, which replicates SQL on top of JSON. We've added full-text search. But we've done all of that with the mindset of doing it as an integrated platform, continuously ensuring that it works together seamlessly, and you can take advantage of these services as you see fit, and fitting them into your existing environments, but still changing the way the applications work and fundamentally, improving your business. One of the reasons that we've been so excited about Connect Silicon Valley is because we're announcing our latest service, analytics. And what we see happening right now is this explosion of data, but what companies need is not just a way to manage the data, but how do they derive more insight from it? How do they create business insight that gives them a competitive advantage? And I'm going to go through some examples in a minute, but succeeding in this digital revolution is not just about, okay, I've created an application. How do I create one that gives me competitive advantage, that allows me to better serve my customers, that makes me a more effective business than my competitors? And the reality is there's huge opportunity, but there's huge risk for companies that don't take advantage of this. And with that mindset in driving our philosophy, this was why we moved forward with analytics. And what analytics enables is us to do with your applications, deliver rich, real-time, actionable insights directly from operational data. We've built it in such a way that you can query data in its natural form. So this isn't about old days where you needed to transform data and spend a lot of time and money to do so. Query it in its natural form. And one of the big breakthroughs, which you're going to be hearing about more, is our ability to run ad hoc queries without slowing down application performance. So derive insight directly from your operational data without the overhead of changing anything, without slowing things down. And when Ravi and the team get up here in a moment, you're going to get more details on how simply this is to deploy and use and take advantage of. Okay, so we've talked a lot about the platform. You're hearing a lot of kind of general capabilities. But what I wanted to do now is put into context how you can better leverage Couchbase, or how you can think about unlocking the value that we've provided. And at the foundation of this is our data platform. And we believe we have the highest performing, most available, easiest to manage, secure database in the industry. And I'm going to talk in a second about the specific architectural decisions we've made to allow me to say that with confidence. But what I also want you to take away is, okay, what areas of my business can I apply this technology? And what we've done is we started to think about things in terms of solutions. And there are 4 of them that I want to talk about. The first is Customer 360. So how do you, on behalf of your businesses, create an integrated, single, omni-channel view of each one of your customers? Catalog and inventory management. How do you deliver relevant product, content, and real-time inventory availability independent of how complicated your inventory may be? How do you maintain that on a real-time basis and ensure that customers are getting accurate information and you can effectively interact with them? Field service. How do you improve productivity of your employees and do so all the way out in the field when they don't have a connection or they're not sitting at company headquarters? And IoT data management. How do we enable companies to manage, support, and deliver real-time insights all the way out to the edge? And these are the solutions that our technology enables. And what we're very proud of is the customers that we have that have already deployed us in making these solutions happen in their respective businesses. And many of you are here today. We spent time last night and we'll continue to over the course of today. Now, you may be asking yourself, well, this seems fairly basic and we've already started deploying this, so how does this all come together? Well, what we want to be more explicit about is how do we make this happen and how do we do so with the performance requirements that you all have in mind? And to build these solutions require a set of use cases that a lot of you are familiar with. Things like user profile, recommendations, operational dashboarding. And some of you, in fact, may be tasked with the solution of go solve this specific problem. But in a lot of cases, it's in the context of this broader solution that you're trying to build on behalf of your companies to allow you to be more competitive. Now, my guess is those of you in the audience are probably not going to a single conference in a year. And some of you may be sitting there saying, well, yeah, this looks really interesting, but there are several vendors that I talk to, and they're all making similar claims. And I'm not going to dispute that at all. What I'm going to tell you, though, is why we're going to do it better and why we do it in a way that other companies don't. And what that comes down to is the fundamentals of our architecture and how we enable these things. So from the very start of our company, we've been focused on building a database for mission-critical applications in the enterprise. And we've always focused on scale and performance as our core tenets. But as we think about our evolution of our technology and how we innovate, there are some core principles that have driven how we've built our product. The first is ease of programmability with the flexible data schema that also combines the power of SQL. And this is how we've taken a query language that replicates SQL and layered that on top of NoSQL that allows you to develop with agility. Our product has a shared nothing, asynchronous, elastic architecture. It's been built to be memory and network centric, and it allows you to add and remove capacity with a simple click based on your application needs and allowing you to be as cost effective and responsive as you have as you're building applications. We understand that things like availability are of paramount importance to you, so we've built in replication to our technology. Things like high availability and cross-data replication are core to our architecture, and anytime we add a new service, we're mindful of the implications around availability. We have a philosophy called workload isolation with multidimensional scaling. So as you all know, applications are dependent on storage, memory, and compute, but not all applications require the same mix of that. So how can you effectively add one of those independent of one another to meet the application needs, but do so cost effectively? We've thought about that. We've designed it into the system. We have a location agnostic geographic distribution of data philosophy. So what that means is you can run our product in the cloud, you can run it all the way out to the edge, and we understand how to manage data at each one of those locations. And with each one of these services, our philosophy is to bring logic to the data, not to try to bring data to the logic. We're deployment agnostic, whether you want to run this on bare metal in a virtualized environment, on premise, in the cloud. And now we've allowed you to orchestrate all of that through Kubernetes. So these are fundamental core tenets of how we've built our architecture. These things are differentiated. You will not be sitting at another conference and saying, wow, that sounds familiar. This is where we differentiate how we've built our product, and what that enables is what Couchbase is all about. So to reinforce that, I want to go back to the solution matrix and show you how some of this ties together. And I want to talk more specifically about 4 customers that we're proud to call partners as they've executed with us on next generation applications. Comcast, a company located here in the United States, depends on great service. They've used Couchbase to create a single view of customers across their many lines of businesses. Amadeus, a European-based company, helps all of us keep flying around the world. And they've built a engine that powers the global travel ecosystem. And you can imagine how complex that is with flight times and passengers and all the details that go along with that, constantly changing inventory around the world that they have to manage on behalf of their customers. United, an airline that we often all fly with, actually issued a mandate that they were going to replace all the paper handouts on flights. And they've done that with an application that they built on Couchbase. And Verizon, a company that's in the business of serving their customers with an IoT platform, allows companies to build applications all the way out to the edge and increase their presence in IoT. So these are companies that have taken advantage of Couchbase. Now, when I hear about that, it's still not enough for me to understand, well, what is it about Couchbase that made this happen? And what really brings it home is the performance requirements that each one of these companies had before they could say, I was successful. So at Comcast, it's not just about an integrated view. It's how do I do that for 100,000 internal users that are accessing 210 million documents. That kind of data volume, those types of performance requirements need a new way of thinking and need a differentiated architecture to serve those applications. At Amadeus, their inventory platform processes 7 million requests per second. And for them to be successful in business, they have to process all of those in less than 2.5 millisecond response times. That's a different type of challenge that requires a different platform. At United, the replacing paper, which sounds convenient and pretty straightforward, imagine changing the experience for 41,000 employees, flight attendants, baggage carriers, pilots, that are all responsible for the thousands of flights that United gets up and down every day and ensuring we not only arrive safely, but we arrive satisfied. 148 million travelers in 2017. Imagine the data volume and the complexity of an application that brings all that together. And at Verizon, their IoT management system drives 3.5 million operations per second, processing 500,000 events per second. So when we think about the fourth industrial revolution and we talk about things like digital transformation and we talk about creating better customer experiences or improving the experience that an employee has, success is not just building an application, which is why companies are investing $24 million apiece to try to get after these things. Now, what's fascinating as we talk to all of you is not all of them are successful because this is really, really hard. And what success means is not just having an application, but having an application that can support these types of data requirements. And so when you think about Couchbase, what you need to realize is that we have architected for these types of applications. High-performing, scalable, mission-critical applications. They're going to help you take advantage of what's happening in the world and make sure that we're driving that, not just being, a passenger on the bus. So what we pride ourselves at Couchbase is solving real solutions to really hard problems. And as you walk around today, you're going to talk to the many people that make this happen. But this isn't about simple problems that we work through quickly. These are deep computer science challenges that require a different approach. And that's what we've been architecting as a company and why we're so excited to have you all here today to continue to talk about innovation. And at the end of the day, what that platform enables through our integrated use cases that enable those solutions is to create a better customer experience, to allow you to innovate faster than the competition, and do so at a lower total cost of ownership. These are the business values that are unlocked with the power of the Couchbase data platform. So you can see then why our mission is to be the data platform that revolutionizes digital innovation. We want to be a partner to our existing customers as you continue to expand and push the envelope on the applications you're building, and helping you fundamentally change your business to be more successful. And we're going to continue to relentlessly push the envelope on innovation while still keeping those core tenets in mind, never sacrificing scale and performance, because that's what we stand for. Thank you very much for being here. We look forward to this event as we lead up to it. We appreciate all of you being here and want to continue the dialogue. We're going to do a lot of talking about what we have. We also want to do a lot of listening. And a big part of what makes Couchbase what it is being customer focused and taking our innovation in the direction that all of you help us define.